It was the summer of 2003. My sister, Chloe, name changed, and I had a trip back to our grandmother's farm in a quiet rural area of Missouri. Our grandmother, Grandma Lena, name changed, lived on a large farm, surrounded by cornfields and sparse woods. Life here was slow, the air fresh, completely different from the city where we lived. One sunny afternoon, we decided to explore the area behind the farm, where we rarely went. We walked through the fields, then headed towards the edge of the woods, where there was a very large old oak tree, its branches providing a cool shaded area. And right near the base of that oak tree, we saw a small house. It wasn't a typical storage shed. It was a small wooden structure, looking like a shack or a temporary building that had been abandoned for a very long time. The paint on the outside was almost completely peeled off. The windows seemed to have broken glass and were boarded up with rotten planks. But what caught our attention was the single entrance door, which was tightly locked with a large, old, rusty padlock. This was strange. Why would a dilapidated shack be locked so carefully? Childish curiosity overcame initial apprehension. We walked closer to the house. The air around it seemed unusually still. We could no longer hear the sounds of insects or birds chirping. Only the sound of our own footsteps on the dry leaves and damp earth remained. When we got close to the house, we peeked through the gaps between the planks boarding up the windows. Inside was dark, dusty, and smelled of damp mold. Chloe looked in first, then I did. We couldn't see anything clearly in that darkness. Then, suddenly, we heard a sound, footsteps, very faint, very close, echoing from inside that locked little house, as if someone was moving around inside. Chloe squeezed my hand tightly, her face scared. We stood still, holding our breath, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then, unexpectedly, something appeared right behind the window plank. It was a hand, a white hand, unnaturally white, as if it had no blood. The hand pressed against the broken glass, slowly moved upwards, and most terrifyingly, it stopped, that hand covering my own eyes from the other side of the glass. As if that thing was standing opposite me and covering my eyes. An icy, horrifying sensation ran down my spine. It wasn't just fear, it was utter disgust and bewilderment. That hand was not the hand of a living person. It was pale, looking as if it had been soaked in water for a long time or lacked life. We both screamed simultaneously, turned around, and ran wildly back towards the main farmhouse, not daring to look back. Our hearts pounded in our chests, gasping for breath, and the image of that pale white hand haunted our minds. We ran back to the main house, burst in, breathless, terrified. Grandma Lena saw how panicked we were and immediately grew worried. We tried to explain what had happened, stumbling over our words, describing the small locked house, the footsteps, and especially the terrifying pale white hand. Our voices trembled, broken. Grandma Lena listened to our story with a sad and heavy expression. She didn't show disbelief or suggest we had imagined it. Instead, she sighed, and said she knew that house. And she knew something wasn't right there. She sat us down, her voice low and somber, and recounted an old story that locals often avoided. About 15 years ago, not long after she had moved to this farm, police had discovered a body in the area behind the farm, not far from the little house and the big oak tree. It was the body of a young girl, brutally murdered. The case shocked the whole town, but the killer was never caught. The case remained an unsolved mystery. And ever since, rumors began to circulate. Local people said the spirit of that girl had not moved on, still trapped in the place where she was murdered and disposed of. Occasionally, at night, people driving by the road near the farm would hear her crying. A mournful, sorrowful cry echoing from the direction of the woods behind the farm. No one dared to go near that little house at night anymore. Grandma Lena had locked it up long ago, not wanting anyone to go near it. But she hadn't told us this story sooner because she didn't want to scare us. Grandma Lena's story explained everything, but it also amplified our fear exponentially. That pale white hand. Could it be the murdered girl's? What did she want by covering my eyes? The initial fear of an abandoned house had turned into genuine horror upon learning it was the place where a suffering spirit was imprisoned. After that night, the atmosphere on the farm, although still peaceful during the day, became terrifying at night. We began to hear strange sounds from behind the farm at night, the wind whistling like a mournful cry, branches hitting each other sounding like scratching, and sometimes, very faintly, muffled sobbing echoing from afar. We were afraid of the dark, afraid of the area behind the farm, and afraid of the thought that the spirit of that girl was still out there, close to us. The fear haunted us even when we were inside the main house. The crying sound Grandma Lena mentioned, which initially seemed very far away, like an echo from the small house, gradually became closer. Sometimes, at night, we heard that crying sound right outside our bedroom window. Very faint, very sorrowful, like someone was standing right outside and sobbing. Footsteps also began to appear around the main house. Soft footsteps on the back porch. The creaking of the floorboards in the hallway outside our room in the middle of the night. As if someone was walking back and forth. They weren't random noises. They had a rhythm, and seemed to be moving around. The dark shadow we fleetingly saw in the night also appeared more often. A shadow gliding down the hallway. A blurry figure lurking near a window as we walked past the living room in the evening. These shadows always seemed to be heading towards the back of the house, towards the area of the oak tree and the locked house. Chloe, my sensitive younger sister, began to change. She became extremely afraid of the dark, didn't dare to sleep alone, and often talked about terrifying dreams of the sad girl standing in the darkness, crying. She also said that sometimes she saw her looking into the room from outside the window, especially the bedroom window facing the back of the house. The haunting seemed focused on my sister and me, perhaps because we had gotten too close to that house, had seen that hand. The feeling of being watched became heavy, as if someone was constantly observing us from outside, or even from within the house. That gaze didn't look at us with anger, but with a deep sadness and an unexplainable longing. The haunting no longer stopped at sounds and sights. It began to involve physical interaction. Icy touches that sent shivers of terror down our spines and made us realize that this spirit was not just a simple ghost. When walking around the house at night, especially in the back areas, we felt sudden cold spots, as if the temperature had dropped tens of degrees Celsius in just an instant. That cold wasn't from the wind or the air. It was a bone-chilling cold, carrying a heavy, gloomy feeling. More horrifyingly, we began to feel touched. While sleeping, the sensation of a cold, lifeless hand touching our legs or shoulders. While walking in the hallway, the feeling of someone brushing past us. A light touch but icy cold. That feeling was exactly like the coldness of the pale white hand I had seen at the window of the locked house. Our belongings also began to be moved inexplicably. Small items, like a hairbrush, a hair clip, or a small toy of Chloe's, were found in strange places in the house, often in dark corners or near windows looking out towards the back of the farm. As if she was playing with our things, or leaving traces of herself. I began to research the case of that girl, Mary, more deeply. Although internet information in 2003 was limited, I still tried to find old news articles, any little information about that case. I knew she was a young girl, perhaps in her early 20s. Her body was found in a state of disfigurement, hidden in that desolate area. This detail sent chills down my spine, making me think of the pale white hand. Was that how she was murdered? Or the state of her body when it was found? My attempt to uncover the truth about the case seemed to provoke her spirit further. The crying sometimes turned into anguished wails or even angry shrieks. The disturbances in the house became more violent. Objects were knocked over. Doors opened and closed automatically with greater force. It felt as if she didn't want her story to be dug up. Or she was taking out her anger on us for some reason we didn't understand. The haunting reached a terrifying climax. And the spirit's intention seemed to become clearer and clearer. She wanted my sister and me. Or at least, she wanted to pull us closer to her world. A world of pain and death. Our dreams became horrifying. I dreamt I was trapped inside the small locked house. Dark and cramped, hearing footsteps wandering outside, and seeing the pale white hand trying to reach through the cracks in the door or window. Chloe dreamt she was running in the woods, the mournful crying echoing, and a blurry figure was chasing her. One night, when the mournful crying echoed again from outside the bedroom window, it was no longer faint, but clear, close sobs. Then, we heard a voice whispering, hoarse, terrifyingly sweet, calling our names. Maya, Chloe, come out, it's cold, being here alone. The voice was full of invitation, but held a terrible despair and loneliness. We suddenly felt an invisible pull, gentle but persistent, towards the window, as if she was trying to draw us outside, towards the small house, towards the woods where she was left behind. At the same time, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly, icy cold. Then, we saw her, standing right outside the window, under the dim moonlight and the shadows of the trees. She was no longer just a shadow. Under the faint light from the street lamp, we saw a pale face, deep-set eyes filled with sorrow, long, disheveled hair hanging down. She stood right outside Lily's bedroom window, her face pressed against the glass, staring straight at the child. Her face was contorted with sadness and rage, and her lips seemed to be muttering something. It felt as if she wanted us to join her in her eternal solitude. Wanted us to stay in this place, with her and the buried deadly secret. The invisible pull grew stronger and stronger. And the crying, the calling of our names, became more urgent. We don't know how, but somehow, in our sheer terror, we managed to resist the pull the curtains shut, and lock the bedroom door. That night was a nightmare. The crying, the calling of our names, the scratching outside the window, the footsteps wandering around the house. It all continued until almost dawn. The next morning, we talked to Grandma Lena. She looked at us, her old eyes full of understanding and sorrow. She knew what had happened. We decided to leave the farm immediately. Grandma Lena understood. There are some things you cannot live with, cannot explain, only escape. We left the farm in Missouri, leaving behind the locked house, the big oak tree, and the trapped, tragic spirit there. Our lives afterwards were never the same. Chloe was deeply traumatized. She was afraid of nightmares in rural areas. As for me, I couldn't forget that pale white hand, the crying in the night, and the face full of sorrow and longing of the girl. Even though we moved away, we knew she was still there. The spirit of Mary, the victim of the unsolved murder, was still trapped in the place where she was murdered and disposed of. She is still in and around the small locked house, under the shadow of the big oak tree, forever crying and perhaps waiting for someone to come, to share the burden of her pain, or simply to have company in her eternal solitude. This story is true. It is what we experienced during our trip back to our grandmother's farm that year. It taught us that this world is full of dark secrets, forgotten tragedies, and souls that cannot move on, forever haunting the places where they tragically departed. If the story of the locked house, the white hand, and the girl crying in the night sent shivers down your spine, if you believe in true horror, unsolved cases, and trapped spirits, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next videos. There are many other horrifying secrets waiting to be told.